Everyone, welcome back. And we are here in season 2, episode 2, starting the week we're talking about something really important here today, guys. We're talking about grace. We're not talking about female's name. We're talking about something as humans that I don't want to say should, right? But it's always nice to extend grace to our fellow humans. And so what does that look like, right? What is grace? It's so easy to say, oh, well, extend some grace, right? It's compassion or kindness that comes from an unconditional place, right? Grace is a sort of unconditional acceptance, right? What that means is I accept you not because of what you do, but because of who you are. I might not like the thing you did, but I like you as a person. That's grace, right? Wow, you really messed up there, but you're not a bad person. That's grace, unconditional acceptance. So what does that look like? It's not mercy. Let me just tell you right now what it's not. Sometimes it's easier to define things by what it's not. It's not mercy. Mercy is when you're in a position of some kind of power and you decide to be compassionate to somebody in that moment, right? That's mercy. And we're not looking for mercy here because we don't have power over anyone else. We really don't. Not in everyday life. Maybe as a boss, maybe as a CEO, maybe as a manager, you do. Maybe as a father or mother to a child, you technically do have power, I guess. But grace is freely given. This is why a lot of times you'll hear about grace as it refers to the Christian God, right? Because Christians, one of the things that they're sort of supposed to do is, what would Jesus do? Well, Jesus was grace. He gave grace out. So should we as Christians. What ends up happening a lot of times is we end up as Christians being more like the Pharisees, which were critical and judgmental. And that, by the by, is the opposite of grace. So if you find yourself being critical or judgmental, you are being the opposite of graceful. And if you don't like to be judged or criticized, why in the world are you doing it to anyone else? Right? So grace is sometimes difficult. It's hard to have grace because what that means is we have to put our emotional responses on the back burner. And that's tough. We are a very emotional nation nowadays. We get very caught up in our belief systems, and we believe our beliefs are the only beliefs. And unfortunately, that's not true, because there are 7 billion people in this world, which means there are 7 billion different ways to look at life. So if you're sitting there saying, oh, well, you're wrong, that's what we call judgment. You've now put yourself in the judge's seat, right? If you're saying that's wrong, that's right. Oh, well, he should have done this. He shouldn't have done that. What you're doing effectively is saying, I know more than you. My ways are right. Your ways are wrong. I'm good. You're bad. I know the way you don't. Opposite of grace. That's the opposite of grace, right? When we criticize people and we're like, I can't believe that she did that with her kid. That's the opposite of grace, right? If you are sitting there critiquing what somebody does, especially if you have an opinion where you don't have responsibility, right? Like, who are you to say what that person's doing with their kid? Worry about what you're doing with your kid. Or if you don't have a kid, don't worry about it at all. It has nothing to do with you, right? And so, extending grace. What we are quick to extend is criticism and judgment. We are not quick to extend any kind of grace or understanding, unmerited favor, compassion, or kindness, right? Because the first thing that we want to do is point out what's wrong with someone else. Even though we hate when people point out what's wrong with us. Or more than that, what's wrong with what we did. Because very often are we actually showing, very, very infrequently do we actually show our true selves, right? More often than not, we're just showing, what the world thinks we should do. So, what does it look like to be graceful, right? What does it look like to extend grace? And it comes from a very secure place. You have to be a very secure person to do this. So, let's say you are, because I'm trying to think of a personal story of when like this happened recently to me or someone showed me grace. Well, actually, to be perfectly honest, I'll just real quick. When I committed my crime, the people who stuck with me, they showed me grace. Period. They showed me grace. They were like, don't like what you did, love you anyway. And I was like, Califook? I was like, what is that? That's new. Because I had been in a position for my whole life where anytime I did something wrong, just like regularly, I'm a human, right? The world would turn, it didn't even feel like this. This was what happened. The world would turn against me. So I was very used to being criticized and judged. Hell, I'm still very used to it. You know what I mean? The world's got a lot to say. However, when everything happened 2 years ago, I was shocked by the people who were like, damn, like you fucked up, but we know you're a good person. Because I didn't feel like a good person, right? I wasn't proud of myself. I wasn't proud of what happened. I didn't feel like a good person. I was very confused. I'm like, all I want to do is help people. What happened, But the people who showed me grace taught me a really important lesson. A hugely important lesson. Not my family, because my family's always been extraordinarily graceful. So I don't want to say I took them for granted, but I kind of did. I was like, well, that's my family. Like, of course they love me anyway. But when there were people, like outpourings of support, there was, of course, also outpourings of criticism. You get it all. But there was outpourings of support that was like, hey, just checking up on you. Like, want to make sure you're okay. Or like former students who were like, hey, listen, not great what you did, but like loved you as a teacher, love you as, the person that we know you as. And I was like, because extending grace and receiving grace a lot of times is a very foreign concept to us when we're really used to being on the end of judgment and criticism. And I, for one, have always been on the end of judgment and criticism, which is why I actually don't struggle in this. It's very easy for me to extend grace to people. This is not something I struggle in, I have some people who are very close to me that do struggle in this a lot. And, we're all just works in progress, so we're all trying. But at least this person is aware of it and working toward it and just trying to be less critical and judgmental, right? Because that's a step to starting to afford grace to people, You can do this in your job, too. I have a phrase that me and one of my former colleagues used to say, which is, not my circus, not my monkeys. If that helps you, right? If there's a place where you want to condemn or criticize like some upper management decision and you actually have no part in it, has nothing to do with you, but you are like, what the heck are they doing? Like, can't believe they made that call. You just stop yourself and be like, you know what? It's not my circus. It's not my monkeys. They're doing the best they can with what they've got. It's amazingly liberating, by the way. And that's grace, guys. That's giving out. They didn't ask for your favor. Now, it doesn't mean unconditional acceptance, giving grace out, does not mean that we accept bad behaviors, right? Like, there were a lot of people, law aside, who were like, listen, what you did wasn't right. And I was like, yo, don't you think I know that? Like, don't you think I know that wasn't right? All right. We have to, and this is another lesson for another day. I'm actually hosting a webinar on this on the 21st. So January 21st, 21, which is separating our who from our do, right? Because we're very, very quick. You can't give out grace if you don't understand this fundamental concept, which is that who we are is different from what we do, right? We think of ourselves as nouns, and we have to think of ourselves as verbs, right? We think of ourselves as, well, I am a teacher. No, you're not. What you do is teach. Well, I am a mother. No, you're not. What you do is parent a child, right? Like I am a lawyer. No, you're not. Like, you're a person. That's what you are. You are a person, right? And this is, again, I don't want to get into it now because it's a whole topic for a whole nother day. And I am hosting a webinar. So if you're interested, check it out. Sign up. It's on my link in my Instagram. And it's free, by the way. Free teachings for all. But if you cannot separate someone's who they are, from what they do, or if you can't separate it with yourself, as I was guilty of and learned the hard way, you're going to have a problem with grace. Because what ends up happening then is that you think a behavior is who a person is, and it's not. So when you condemn their behavior, well, I don't like the way that she acted. You're condemning who they are. You probably do it to yourself as well. Because I guarantee if you do not extend grace to other people, you definitely don't extend it to yourself. When I was before everything happened to me, I was very good at extending grace to other people. I was bad at giving it to myself, though. I was very critical and very judgmental of myself, and often my partners, because I kind of put them on the same level as me. And that level was, well, you're not really good enough. Because that's what we're saying, right? When we don't give grace to someone, we're saying you're not good enough. And when we don't give grace to ourselves, we're saying, I'm not good enough, right? And that's what I did for a lot of years. But I was very good because I hated being judged. And I've always been judged. Anybody who's grown up with me knows that, right? But, or just check out my name anywhere, But with this idea of grace, if you criticize yourself at every turn, it's because you're saying, I'm not good enough. And what that means is that your self-worth and your self-value and your self-concept is low. And I talked about that back in season 1. I think it was the second thing. Because our self-worth and our self-value and our self-concept has to be strong for us to extend grace to both ourselves and other people. Now, like all things, I only just learned this for myself 2 years ago. And it was a hard lesson, not a fun lesson, right? So I'm trying to hope that you guys can learn a little something from me here. So if this is sounding familiar, you criticize, you judge, you say things like, oh, well, look at that person, right? Really listen to what you say about other people, right? Oh, well, look at that person. Or, oh my God, well, she's not that cute. Or who does he think he is? Right? That get off your high horse because you're judging now, people. You're not extending grace. You're not extending mercy. Not mercy. Kindness to people. We're not being kind when we do that. Right? Everybody says, oh, be kind. That's what kindness is. Unconditional acceptance. So, back to my larger point. If you cannot put who and do in two different categories, what ends up happening is that you have a hard time with unconditional acceptance. Because when you make a mistake, you think you're a bad person. And I've been there, done that, you know what I mean? And what ends up happening is you're not a bad person. You made a bad decision, or a couple of them, or a lot of them, or maybe you made bad decisions for 20 years. Because here's the thing that I want us to really remember. Would anybody ever go to a baby and be like, oh, that baby's bad? No! If you look at a baby, everyone's like, oh, look at the cute little baby. Blah, blah, blah. Which, again, I don't understand it myself. But we do unconditionally accept babies. In fact, when we don't unconditionally accept babies, like me, I'm like, that thing looks like an alien. I don't know what to tell you. That's a weird looking baby. The concepts of babies are weird to me. It didn't exist, now it does. That's weird. Right? That's crazy. Most people don't feel like that. I'm one of the exceptions. I'm like, oh, that's weird. Most people are like, oh my God, it's a baby, yay! Why don't we treat people like that always? Why does that stop? Why do we do that? You only have value when you can't talk, walk, eat, or do anything on your own? No. Like, we should get more value the more we go through, right? Like, wow, you survived 35 years. You rock. Get it? It's a hard life. You know what I mean? So what ends up happening that is, I don't know, the older we get for whatever reason, sometimes the more embittered we get, but more than that, the more mistreated we are, it's hard for us to retain grace because people hurt, words hurt. You know, you've probably heard this before, but hurting people hurt people. That's what happens. We're all little monsters, right? We don't mean to hurt, and we do. So grace, extending it to yourself, and extending it to everybody in your sphere of influence is super, super, super important. Which brings me to like the political stuff going on now. I don't want to get too much into politics. I did a separate post on it, but your way is not right. I'm going to tell you that right now. Your way is not right. Did that hurt? Because I know what you're thinking, like, what? I guess it is. No, it's not. Like, your way is right for you. And that's awesome. And I hope you find some like-minded people. But at the end of the day, like, your way is right for you. That's it. That is it. That's it. And I know what you're thinking, like, oh, well, the Constitution and the law and this document and that document. And I'm going to say, okay, those organizations are organizations, so they're flawed. Just going to throw that out there. As somebody who's getting a PhD in organizational leadership and who understands organizational development, let me tell you that any organization ever is going to have its flaws in the system. It is. That's anything, ever. It's going to be flawed. People are going to be disgruntled. So those are your lawmakers and your policymakers as well. That's one. Organizations are inherently flawed because they're made up of people, and people are flawed. Two, when we're thinking about any document, constitution, legal, etc., it is in black and white, which leaves no room for gray and no room for color. And unfortunately, life doesn't work like that. So if you are trying to match your standards as a human to the standards that are lined out in black and white documents, what that means about you is that you're very black and white. And what that also means about you is that there's no room for grace. There's no room for color. There's no room for mistakes and growth and learning. You don't have a growth mindset. You have a fixed mindset. If your way is always the right way and it's the only way and everybody else is wrong, you're going to have a problem with grace. And you're really going to have a problem with growth. And you're probably not listening to me, to be perfectly honest. So, because we're here for growth. We're here for transformation. We're here for learning, right? So, if you are here, welcome. You're so welcome, right? Because I love you just as you are. Because I know what you can be, which is somebody who's trying to grow, right? That's all we're trying to do. We're either growing or we're dying. I'm here to help you grow. I'm growing every day, right? Here to help you grow if you help yourself. But we can't apply grace without really taking an inventory of ourselves and who we are. And now I'm really going deep. Don't know if you noticed, guys, but season 2 is going just a little bit deeper than season 1, right? Really, really coming at you now with some depth. So I hope that's all right with you guys. So grace, I mean, it is amazing. I'm excited to talk about this all week. One, because it's one that I don't struggle with for once. Like, love that. Yes, we love that. But more than that, two, it's an important one because, as you can tell, there's a lot of dissension out there. There's a lot of disunity out there. It's ugly. It's an ugly, ugly thing. We don't like it. Our souls cry out against it. We don't like it. We are a unified people. And we can only be a unified people when we unequivocally accept people, regardless of their beliefs. Okay, listen, you're a Democrat and I don't like you. I don't like your belief, but I love you. Ooh, you're a Republican. I don't really like a Republican, but I love you. Right? You're entitled to your beliefs. I don't agree with them, but you're entitled to them. I'm entitled to my beliefs. Right? And that's that. I'm not going to try to change you. I'm going to speak out what I believe because this is the core fundamental, like where I am. And you do you. And that's that. And there we go. Grace. It's a beautiful thing. We love it. Right? I don't know why we're trying to get in there and change everybody and fix everybody to be more like us. We don't need more of you. We need just you. And you need just them. And everybody needs to just be themselves. Because you're the only you that we've got. Right? So stop trying to make everybody else like you and start really working on you and making yourself the best version of yourself by extending yourself grace and extending grace to everybody else who needs it. Because, like, we all do. We're here. And it's rough. So, hope that you enjoyed that one. Love bringing it to you. We're going to talk more about it. But, kindness really goes. Kindness is like the best currency. So, spread it around. And I will see you next week. Bye, guys.